Hi guys, I'm going to be starting with chapter 7 and then going into chapter 8 for today's reading. When we left off in chapter 6, the girls had gotten to DC and had tracked down some of the Women's Party movement people. Most notably was, oh gosh, what is her name? She's a real person, Miss Paul. There was also another woman named Miss Dexter who was going to be heading down to Nashville where Chloe was, who was not very friendly, especially not to Myrtle. So we're going to find out what happens next. Chapter 7 is called Heading to Nashville. An alarming sight greeted Violet and Myrtle when they came down to breakfast in the morning. Mr. Martin, whom they had left at the settlement house in New York, was quietly sipping coffee at the kitchen table with his hat in his hand. Mr. Martin. Miss Dexter was at the table too. They both turned to look at Violet and Myrtle. "Good morning," said Miss Dexter. She said it with a somewhat martyred air. She pushed a plate of toast toward the girls. "There's coffee on the stove." "Good morning," said Mr. Martin. "Good morning, Mr. Martin," said Violet awkwardly. She'd thought that once they'd gotten away from Mr. Martin and his awkward questions about parents at the Henry Street settlement house, that would be the end of him. That he would actually come after them hadn't occurred to her. "You followed us here, sir?" said Myrtle. "Not exactly," said Mr. Martin. "I came here to make sure you were still in one piece, yes. But I took the train from Penn Station. I'm not really sure how you got here." "We hopped 2 freight trains in a blind," said Myrtle matter-of-factly. Violet looked down at her shoes, expecting to be scolded. It was her usual lot in life. But if Mr. Martin thought he was going to make her go home to Susquehanna, he could think again. Mr. Martin raised an eyebrow. "That's very dangerous, you know. Accidents happen to people jumping freight trains. I've seen people who have lost arms and legs." Against her will, Violet found herself looking at Mr. Martin's hand with the missing fingers. She would have liked to have asked what happened to them, but such a question was unthinkable. "And what about your families?" Mr. Martin went on. "Did you think to tell them where you are?" "I don't have a family," said Myrtle. Dr. Martin turned his raised eyebrows on Myrtle, and Violet felt the need to back her up. "It's true, Mr. Martin, she doesn't." "And what about your parents, Miss Mayhew?" Mr. Martin said. "I think they must be frantic by now, don't you?" "No," said Violet. "They only care about my brother Stephen. They think girls aren't good for much." "They are your parents," said Mr. Martin. "It doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. They'll be worried. As soon as you've eaten, we'll go out and send them a telegram." "I'm not going back," said Violet, starting to panic. "I want to go to Tennessee. I want to see Chloe." She had planned on joining the ladies who were going to Tennessee if they would let her. "Please sit down and eat, Violet," Miss Dexter pleaded. The way she said it made Violet realize that she might be causing a scene, and so she immediately sat down and did as she was told. Myrtle sat down and reached for a piece of toast. She spread it with strawberry jam. "Don't you want to go to Tennessee, sir?" Unaccountably, Mr. Martin looked embarrassed again. "Why would I want to go to Tennessee, Miss Davies?" "Because history is going to be made," Miss Dexter said enthusiastically. 2 pink spots stood out on her cheeks. "I'm going. I wouldn't miss it for the world. If Tennessee becomes the 36th state to ratify the Susan B. Anthony Amendment and women get the vote, won't that be something? To say you were there and saw it?" "Yes," said Myrtle. "I'd like to go too," said Violet. She wasn't a suffragist, but Chloe was in Tennessee. "Well, so would I," Mr. Martin admitted. He frowned at Violet. "But we're still going to wire your parents as soon as you're done eating." Violet stared at him, unsure what he meant. He couldn't possibly mean that he was going to let Violet and Myrtle go to Tennessee, and in fact, go with them. "It's my duty anyway to see that you get there safely," Mr. Martin added. He sounded like he was talking himself into something. Miss Burns swept into the kitchen, her red hair glowing in the morning light. Miss Dexter introduced her. "So you're the Mr. Martin we've heard so much about," said Miss Burns. Mr. Martin looked down at his coffee, coloring. "Nothing too bad, I hope." "Very little at all bad," said Miss Burns, amused. "I understand you taught Chloe to patch automobile tires." Violet looked at Mr. Martin in surprise. She remembered that from Chloe's letters. And now he wants to go off to Tennessee, said Miss Dexter, along with... She frowned at Myrtle again. Well, we have space on the train, said Miss Burns. Why shouldn't they go and see history being made? And see a certain suffragist, she added, looking right at Mr. Martin. I'm going to stop there and I'll join you back. That was at the end of page 79.